My family, whom I haven't spoken to in 10 years, contacted me because my father is dying. But they reached out because they want me to sacrifice my business to finance my golden sister's life. 10 days ago, my family contacted me after 10 years without speaking to me. I'm a 31-year-old woman, and at 21, just after graduating from college, I decided to cut ties with my family and distance myself from them. The reason was the way they treated me compared to my sister. I have a twin sister, let's call her Rebecca to keep things private. She's 12 minutes older than me, and for some reason my family has always treated her much better than me. She's basically the golden child of the family, and always has been. I don't know why, but my family always preferred her, even though I've achieved more than she has. I was always the better student, better at sports, and even better at things she considers herself an expert in, like art. Anything you can name, I'm better at it. The reason is that I always tried to outdo her as a child, hoping that maybe that would make my parents love me more. If anything, that only made them love me less, because, to them, it probably seemed like I was doing it on purpose to belittle my sister. It wasn't like that, honestly. I just wanted them to give me the same love and affection that I saw Rebecca receiving, but never me. They always supported her, enrolled her in whatever classes she wanted, bought her whatever she wanted, and she's just had my parents wrapped around her finger her entire life. For me, it was completely different. Whenever I asked for something, they would tell me not to act like a spoiled, entitled child. Even when it came to college, she said she wanted to take a gap year, which ended up being 3 years. She never ended up going to college, so she doesn't even have a degree. I, on the other hand, was accepted into a respected business school due to my good grades. I needed money from my parents to cover the tuition, but they told me I'd have to take out a student loan and pay for it all myself in the future, because they didn't believe they needed to sponsor me. Not even after I turned 18. I thought that was really painful, but I needed their help with the loans, so I didn't say anything at the time. I accepted the fact that they were never going to love me as much as Rebecca, so I just accepted my fate. I didn't really stay in touch with them while I was in college, and only went home for holidays occasionally. Even then, I didn't talk to them much, because after high school, I pretty much distanced myself emotionally from my parents, so I wouldn't keep getting hurt over and over again. When I was about to graduate, I invited them to attend the ceremony, but I never received a response from them. I tried everything. I tried calling them, I sent them new emails, and I even thought about visiting them, but by then, I had already tried calling and messaging them, and they hadn't responded to any of that. So I thought they just didn't want to attend. It wasn't until after the ceremony that I found out from some relatives that they couldn't attend, because my graduation ceremony was on the same day as my sister's first day of art school. Of course, her first day at 21 years old was much more important than my graduation ceremony, so they couldn't leave her alone that day. It was crazy because she wasn't even attending a respectable institution. She was taking art classes at the nearby community college, which was literally only half an hour from our house. I think that day I realized that my existence didn't matter to them, and that they would rather I didn't contact them again. The message was clear and had always been, but that day I decided I didn't need to pretend to have a family just to comfort myself. In fact, not having a family was probably better than having one like that. So I stopped talking to my parents, blocked them everywhere, and ended it all. I did the same with my sister because Rebecca and I never had a good relationship. Because of the love and affection she received from my parents, she always assumed she was better than me, even though I had plenty of evidence to prove otherwise. I was better than her in every way, and I think she knew it, which is why she was so insecure around me and always tried to put me down. Well, the joke's on her because now I'm in a much better place than she is in life. She was always quite arrogant and conceited about everything, so we never got along. And I don't regret blocking her and cutting them all out of my life. After that, I really didn't have any financial support and had to worry about paying off my student debt, so I took the first job opportunity that came my way. Since then, I've been working to prove to myself and show everyone that I'm good enough on my own and don't need my parents to survive. Things were tough at first, but I had a lot of good friends from school who were always there for me and had my back. Now I'm in a really good place, both financially and mentally. For the last 5 years, I've been working at a vegan products company. Recently, I've been considering starting my own business. I've gotten really interested in the vegan lifestyle and have been studying it extensively over the last few years. Although I'm not vegan myself, I believe it's a huge market to explore. I've been considering starting something of my own for a few months now, and I've talked to some people who are willing to join me in my venture. The plan was to start working on my business model and plan everything out over the next few months, then quit my job once I had a couple of investors on board and start my own business. But then, Last week, I got news from my family that my father was on his deathbed and that I needed to go see him. It had been 10 years since I'd spoken to anyone in my family, and I was very surprised that they reached out to me. When I found out that my father had been battling cancer for the last 3 years, I didn't hesitate to drop everything and go home. Unfortunately, it was already too late. He was in a really bad condition, and there was no turning back. Probably in a last-ditch effort to make amends with me, or maybe just to talk about my sister, they invited me to visit him one last time. When I saw him, I almost broke down in the hospital because I had never seen him like that. My mom hugged me, and it was really painful, to be honest. For a while, I forgot everything about the past and was only concerned about my father and whether he was going to make it. Rebecca was also there, but I didn't talk to her because she made no effort to talk to me. She just grimaced and sat in a corner the whole time I was there. My mom talked to me and told me about my dad, but Rebecca was the only person who pretended I wasn't even there. That really bothered me, so I didn't talk to her. Anyway, I really don't like her, and I have no interest in what she's doing. I thought it was completely normal for us not to talk, and no one in the family seemed to care about our behavior because they knew the kind of relationship I had with these people. This was just a week ago, and 2 days later, my father passed away. Everyone knew he wasn't going to last much longer, so my mother and sister had already made the funeral arrangements. It didn't take long to wrap everything up, so I was able to go back home. But unfortunately, I was made to agree to something I really didn't want to do. Before my father passed away, on the second day of my visit, Rebecca went home because she was really exhausted. At one point, it was just my parents and me in the hospital room. They started talking to me about my job. I thought it was something innocent and didn't give it much importance because my father was literally on his deathbed. I didn't think they could be planning something nefarious at that moment, so I told them that I'd been working at a very successful company for the last 2 years and that I was doing well. They congratulated me, but then they started telling me how poorly Rebecca was doing. They said she had dropped out of community college after the first few months and hadn't tried again. She didn't have a college degree, and her grades hadn't been good in school, so she couldn't explain the gap and didn't even try. She did nothing until she was 25 years old, and then my parents started pressuring her to get a job. She eventually did, but she could never last more than 3 or 4 months. She would come home and tell our parents that she quit because the job was too hard and they didn't pay her enough. It didn't make sense because she was being paid the appropriate amount for someone without a college degree. She was working in low-paying jobs and wasn't willing to put in the effort to move up the career ladder. None of it made sense, and my parents had been trying to explain to her that her arguments wouldn't hold up in the real world. They had been arguing with Rebecca a lot, trying to make her independent, but she didn't seem to care about the future and took everything very lightly. Every time my parents tried to talk to her about it, she ignored them. She recently left her last job 6 months ago and has been at home doing nothing. They told me they were really worried about her and wanted me to take care of her because after my father was gone, my mother was too old and had to think about her own retirement, which was only a year away. She couldn't keep working to support a daughter who should be able to support herself by now. Honestly, I had no idea how to respond to everything they were saying because my father was suffering, and I didn't want to be the one to break his heart after all this time. We had gone 10 years without any contact between us, and at that moment, I was feeling very mixed emotions. I tried to tell my parents that I was planning to start my own business. It wasn't really the right time to take on that responsibility because I knew Rebecca was a burden and had no interest in making money for herself. She was completely comfortable living off other people's money, and that's what she had been doing until now. The only difference was that before it was my parents who were taking care of her, especially my father, because he made more money than my mother. But now, my father was passing the responsibility on to me, saying that I had to take care of my sister. I understood why he wanted me to take on that responsibility, but I tried to tell them it wouldn't be possible at that moment because I was planning to quit my job and start something of my own. Therefore, all my money would go toward that. But my dad told me that they had already spent a lot of money on his healthcare and medical expenses, and he still wanted my mom to be comfortable. That was his priority. He knew I would be there to take care of Rebecca, which is why he was counting on me, and somehow he forced and manipulated me into agreeing to take care of Rebecca's future. He made me promise that I would postpone my business plans until Rebecca was at least somewhat financially stable, and he made me promise that I would take care of and support her until then. I didn't even know how long that would take, but I still said yes because I didn't feel comfortable saying no to a man who was on his deathbed, no matter what he had done to me in the past. I just didn't feel comfortable with it. I guess it was really stupid of me, but I don't think anyone else in my situation would have been able to react differently. And if someone could have stood up to their parents in that position, well, I have to say they might be very strong, but I'm not like that. And I ended up agreeing. I wasn't happy about it, but I had to do it because, apparently, my father was going to pass away soon, and I couldn't say no to his last wish. They also told me exactly what it entailed, as Rebecca was in a relationship with a guy from school named Jared, and she planned to visit him since he worked in another city but in the same state. I really couldn't understand why they couldn't visit each other more often, because if it wasn't Rebecca, at least it was Jared, who had a job, and he could come to visit her. But they were doing the long-distance relationship thing. So it turns out I know this guy she was dating and I know what kind of person he is, so I instantly knew it wasn't good for her to be involved with him. That same night, my parents told me that Rebecca had been talking to this guy for the last 2 years, and most of it was online. But he had come back here to visit her for a couple of weeks during the holidays. And that was the only time they were together. This guy, let's just say he doesn't have the strongest values when it comes to women. In school, he was known for flirting with every girl he could talk to. And several of his high school girlfriends caught him cheating multiple times. I didn't keep track of him after we graduated, but I heard from some mutual friends from high school that he had already been divorced once, also due to infidelity. I don't know what his problem was, but I knew he wasn't someone I would personally trust. I tried to explain this to my parents as well, but they told me that Rebecca seemed to really like him, and that they had seen them together during his visits home, and they believed they were meant to be together because they seemed absolutely perfect and really in love. I already had a bad feeling about it because they were doing the long-distance relationship thing, and that only meant cheating without worrying about being caught since he was in a completely different city, and Rebecca had no idea about this. My parents told me that they wanted me to pay for her plane tickets to go see him in the coming weeks, because they knew she would be quite weak after our father passed away. Since they wanted someone to be with her, and my mother would be too busy with the legal paperwork after Dad's death and I would obviously have to return to my job, she would need someone by her side, and they wanted it to be her boyfriend. I did my best to tell them what kind of person he was and warned them about the consequences of this. They were convinced that Rebecca and Jared would get married in the future and kept telling me that I would have to take care of these things after Dad was gone, and that I would also have to pay for the wedding in the future. They were pretty convinced that Jared was the perfect guy for Rebecca, and I really couldn't convince them otherwise. So I also agreed because it seemed pretty useless to try to convince them that he wasn't the right guy. After Dad passed away, I pulled Rebecca aside at the funeral and told her I knew about Jared. I tried to warn her about the consequences. I've known Jared and his Casanova behavior for a long time, and I didn't think it was good for her to be involved with him. But like my parents, she also ignored my warnings and told me that he had changed, and she knew it. She said they were in love, and that she knew he would never cheat on her or do anything to hurt her, so she wasn't too concerned about my warnings. She thanked me for worrying about her, but then she told me that she would only appreciate financial help, and that I didn't need to be her father or try to have any kind of emotional bond with her. It wasn't necessary. That was a bit unpleasant and painful, and that day, after that conversation, I decided I was going to do exactly what she said. My father had only told me to take care of her financially. He hadn't said anything about the emotional factor. So, in a way, she was right in what she said, and I decided to keep myself emotionally distant from my family because I had better things to do and needed to focus on my work. After the funeral, I came back here, and it's been a week since then. 2 days after the funeral, my mother told me to book the plane tickets so that she could go see Jared, and I did what she asked. It was a small price to pay to show her reality. After that, I didn't bother checking on anyone because I was busy with my work. However, yesterday I had an unexpected visit at my door. It was Rebecca, who had taken the bus from Jared's city to mine because she was too embarrassed to call me, but she didn't want to go home either. She could afford the bus tickets, so that's how she got here after traveling for 10 hours. When she arrived, she was exhausted and crying. When I opened the door for her, I was really confused about what was happening. The moment I opened the door, she immediately started crying and told me that I had been right about everything. She told me that she had planned to surprise Jared, so when she got to his house, it was quite an unexpected surprise. He was actually spending time with another girl at his house when she arrived. When she saw that, she confronted him immediately and asked who that girl was, and he told her to mind her own business. Then he said that they weren't exclusive, and that he was free to do whatever he wanted when she wasn't at home with him, so she had no right to ask him about his life there. That obviously enraged her because, in her mind, they had been together for 2 years, and she was completely committed to him and thinking about marrying him. So that was pretty painful, and they ended up having a big fight in the hallway of his house. At one point, in a fit of anger, she apparently decided to pick up her travel bag and hit him with it because she was so angry. Unfortunately, one of the bag's chains hit him on the eyebrow and he started bleeding profusely. She got really scared and ran out, went to the bus stop, and took the first bus she could to get here. Now she wants my help. She told me she was ready to learn how to be independent and fix her life, and that I needed to be the one to do it for her because I've been independent for a long time, almost 10 years now. She thought there would be no one better than me to teach her the ins and outs of my job and give her a job. She told me she knew I was about to start my own business and hoped that maybe I would give her the chance to work there, not as an employee but as a partner. It was too much to process for me, and before I could agree to anything, I decided to ask her if she knew whether Jared had decided to press charges against her or not. Because if he had, I didn't want anything to do with her. What she had done was wrong. It didn't matter what Jared was doing. She had no right to be physically violent with him, and that was reason enough to press charges. Even if she had managed to escape the scene, he could still easily find her, and she could be arrested for it. In that case, I didn't want anything to do with her because I wasn't going to be the one to clean up her mess. When I asked her, that's when the truth came out. She told me that she hadn't actually managed to escape. He had pressed charges against her, and she had to pay a huge fine as compensation for what she did, which is why she was here. I told her that there was no way I was going to help her, and told her to go back home because I didn't want to get involved in any of this. She got very upset when I said that and reminded me of the promise I made to my father before he passed away. But I told her that the promise no longer mattered because to me it was very clear that she was an idiot and was never going to do the right thing. So, I wasn't going to be there to clean up her mess after her. I just wanted to start my own business and didn't want her to join me because she was a complete liability. I told her that the least I could do for her was to book her plane ticket so she could go back home, but after that, she was on her own. And I was just going to go back to having no contact with my family because this was too much. It had only been a week, and she had already messed up colossally. None of this would have happened if she had listened to my warning and stayed away from that guy, which she chose not to do even after what I told her. So I was really irritated by everything, and I told her I was going to book her flight tickets so she could go to the airport and wait there instead of wasting my time since I had a lot of work to catch up on. She couldn't argue with me because I was already booking the tickets, so she left for the airport in a taxi a few minutes later. I thought that would be the end of it, but obviously, now my mother is angry about what I did. She thinks I should have been kinder to my sister and taken her as a partner in the business, since she wanted to straighten out her life and get it in order. To her, this was my chance to be helpful, and I refused it because I was too selfish to do it. At least that's what my mother believes. I don't think I was selfish at all. In fact, I think I was quite helpful in booking her the plane tickets so she could go back home. Now, obviously, she has to figure out how to pay the fine to Jared, but that's no longer my concern since she was the one who decided to hit him and visit him despite my warning. My mother is really angry with me and constantly calls and texts me to remind me of the promise I made to my father and to tell me that I'm not fulfilling it in the way she expected. So, am I the bad person for refusing to clean up the mess my sister made despite the promise I made to my father on his deathbed? Update 1. Hi, it's been 3 days since my sister visited me, and I rejected her. My mother has been trying to contact me since then, but I decided to block her because she was really getting on my nerves. I don't owe anyone anything to help them. Yes, I made a promise to my father, but honestly, I was manipulated and pressured into making that promise. It wasn't something I really wanted to do. I think I made it clear enough, and even most of the comments said it was really manipulative of my parents to contact me only when my father was on his deathbed. Even then, it was pretty clear they only wanted me to visit them to ensure I would help Rebecca later on. Despite the fact that he was leaving, he still manipulated me into doing something for the family's golden child. It's really incredible. They always cared about her and never about me. No matter what kind of relationship we had, he was still my dad, and it hurt to see him die. But now I don't know how to feel about it. I don't really miss him since I never had a good relationship with any of them, and for the last 10 years, I haven't been in contact with them. I feel a certain disappointment and disillusionment. It was my mistake to believe that things could change between all of us, or that my family could care about something other than my sister. I guess not. That's never going to happen. Anyway, I can focus on many other things that have nothing to do with my sister, and that's what I'm going to do. Now I'm going to focus on starting my own business, no matter what. No one is going to stop me. I already lost focus once, and it wasn't good for me. I'm not going to let it happen again. Update 2. Hi. Today Rebecca contacted me. I guess I forgot to block her. She sent me a message saying that she managed to pay the fine and no longer needed my help. She also told me that my mother was really disappointed and never wanted to see me again. I guess that's fine with me. I didn't want to see them again either. They only wanted me for my money, not for who I am as a person, and they were never going to change the way they treated me. After reading that message, I didn't even bother responding and just blocked her. I was done with this. Update 3. Hello everyone. A couple of months have passed, and I wanted to share a brief update on how my business project is progressing. The business model is almost complete, and I've received a lot of positive feedback from all the investors I've approached. I'm planning to quit my job and submit my resignation in a few days because I feel ready to start this next chapter. Once again, I'm maintaining zero contact with my family, and honestly, things have never been better for me. Cutting ties with them again was really the best decision I could have made. This business is becoming my new focus and my new family. Update 4. After a little over a year since the last time I wrote, I have something new that will surely be interesting to mention. The day before yesterday, I received a call from my mother's mother, which I answered because I certainly don't have any problem with her, and she's part of the family I talk to from time to time. She told me that my mother had an accident at home, slipping down the stairs and falling hard. Fortunately for her, she didn't fall from a great height, but she almost reached the ground floor. However, she still broke her wrist when trying to stop the fall, and she also hurt her hip. She said that my mother had asked about me and whether I could go visit her since my sister moved to another city with a new guy and can't come because of work in her busy life. She expected me to be with her at the hospital to help with bills and things around the house. My aunt can't go either because she lives in another state and doesn't have much money to buy a plane ticket and be with her. However, I told my aunt that it wouldn't be possible for me to go. Firstly, because she's always been a bad mother to me, only calling me when there's an emergency and making me clean up my sister's dirty dishes. In this case, she doesn't want to be there for her mother, who has always been there for her. Secondly, I'm working on my new business, which, since it's new and in its early stages, requires a lot of my attention. Then I thanked my aunt for calling, but I also told her it wasn't necessary because I wasn't interested in knowing about that part of my family. After that, I told her she was free to tell my mother everything or not, and finally that she could call me if she wanted to talk about anything else. We said goodbye, and I hung up. Although she tried to convince me to change my mind at first, when she saw that I had already made my decision, she understood. After that, I didn't hear anything more. So I don't know if my mother was discharged or what really happened. I haven't shown any interest in finding out either. That's all for now.